The sound in the fields, 700 words. Pete always thought the countryside at night was supposed to feel peaceful. Quiet fields, soft moonlight, nothing but wind in the grass. But on this particular night, the calm atmosphere had a way of making the silence feel too perfect, almost staged. Inside their small farmhouse, he was getting ready for bed when he noticed something strange through the window. His wife, Ashley, was standing alone in the yard, her face lifted to the sky like she was transfixed by something. Curious, Pete grabbed his phone and headed out to join her. The air was cool, the yard washed in pale silver light from a near-perfect full moon. For a moment, the scene felt magical, quiet, calm, untouched. Pete slipped an arm around Ashley and followed her gaze upward. "You can almost see the whole outline tonight," she murmured. "Yeah," Pete said, "looks like it's going to be a full moon soon." But before either of them could admire the sky for another second, a noise rolled across the fields, long, stretched, and unnatural. It didn't sound like an animal or machinery. It sounded like something far away calling through a metal tunnel, bending and warping as it traveled. The couple froze. "What was that?" Ashley whispered. Pete listened carefully, his heart dropping as the sound echoed again, drifting across the open land with a strange, almost melodic wobble. It rose, fell, then shifted direction, as if something was moving while making it. "It's pretty far," Pete said, trying to sound calm. "Probably nothing." But even he didn't believe that. Some people online liked to post videos explaining strange rural sounds: foxes, deer, coyotes. Pete had heard them all before. This was none of those. The pitch, the distortion, the direction, it all felt wrong, like something alive was trying to imitate an animal, but couldn't get it quite right. The sound came again, this time shorter but sharper, and the two of them instinctively stepped closer to each other. The night, once calming, now felt hollow. Empty. Watching. They stayed outside a moment longer, straining their eyes toward the distant fields. When the sound faded into silence, the couple finally returned indoors. But neither slept well. Every creak of the house felt like something creeping closer. The next afternoon, hoping to shake off the lingering tension from the night before, Pete suggested they go for a walk through the woods behind their property. Fresh air, sunlight, birdsong, it felt like the perfect way to reset. At first, it worked. The woods were bright and inviting, the leaves rustling gently under their shoes as they followed a narrow hiking trail. Ashley joked that this was their weird countryside version of date night. But halfway down the path, Pete suddenly stopped. "Wait," he whispered. "Do you hear that?" Ashley turned. "Hear what?" Before she could finish asking, the microphone on Pete's phone picked it up. Soft footsteps crunching on dried leaves behind them. Slow. Steady. Human. Pete spun around, but the trail was empty. No hikers. No animals. The woods looked completely still. "Maybe it's..." Ashley started. Crunch. Crunch. The footsteps continued for several seconds, close enough that they should have seen someone. But the path behind them was bare. Something was there, yet not there. Whatever had made the warp siren call last night, it hadn't stayed in the fields. Pete and Ashley stood frozen, too afraid to move, listening as the footsteps faded. The woods around them held its breath, as if waiting for something else to happen. That something else happened seconds later. A familiar sound drifted through the trees, low at first, then rising, stretching unnaturally in a way that sent chills up their spines. The same warped siren-like cry from the night before echoed through the forest, weaving between the trunks. Ashley's voice shook. "Pete, we need to go. We're leaving. Now." They turned and hurried down the trail, the camera shaking in Pete's hand as the sound rose again. Closer this time. Too close. They didn't stop running until their house finally came into view. That night, neither of them spoke much. But the silence wasn't comfort, it was fear. Because deep down, they both realized something unsettling. Whatever called out to them in the fields had followed them into the woods. And it wasn't done yet. By the next morning, the house felt different. Not haunted, just watched. The kind of feeling you get when the air seems too still and every sound seems too deliberate. Pete tried brushing it off as leftover nerves, but Ashley kept glancing toward the tree line, as if expecting something to move. Around noon, Pete decided to check the yard. Maybe he'd find tracks, or some sign that last night's fear was rooted in something normal. His rational brain needed answers. The grass was wet with dew, soft enough that footprints should have been obvious. But the only tracks near the house were his and Ashley's from earlier. No animals. No tires. No strangers passing through. Just untouched grass except for one thing. At the far end of the field, right where the moonlight had fallen the night before, the grass was flattened in a strange, swirling pattern. Not like someone walked through it. More like something had lowered itself there and moved in a slow circle. He crouched down, brushing his fingers across the pattern. The grass felt damp and cold, far colder than the rest of the yard. A sudden gust of wind rustled the trees, making Pete jolt upright. "Okay," he muttered. "That's enough for today." Inside the house, Ashley was quiet. She kept pacing from window to window, opening the curtains, then closing them again. When Pete asked what was wrong, she hesitated. "Last night," she said, "when we were in the woods, I swear I saw something behind us." Pete felt his stomach tighten. "What did you see?" Ashley swallowed. "A shape.
Tall. Thin.
Like it was standing between the trees, watching us. I thought I imagined it, but..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. That evening, they kept the lights on earlier than usual. The sun dipped behind the hills, stretching long shadows across their yard like dark fingers reaching toward the house. Pete tried turning on the TV for background noise, but it only made the silence between them feel louder. Around 10 p.m., as they prepared for bed, a dull thump echoed against the side of the house. They froze. Another thump. Then a dragging sound. Pete grabbed his phone and crept toward the window. The porch light flickered across the yard, showing nothing but darkness and swaying branches. He unlocked the door, but Ashley grabbed his wrist. "Don't go out there," she whispered. "Not tonight." Another thump, this time closer, right beneath the bedroom window. Pete felt his pulse spike. He stepped back, swallowed hard, and checked his phone camera, aimed under the curtain gap toward the yard. Through the grainy night vision, he didn't see anything at first. Just grass, the fence, the shed. Then the camera flickered.
Once. Twice.
On the third flicker, something tall appeared at the edge of the frame, still, silent, almost blending into the darkness. Not clear enough to identify. Not close enough to be obvious. Just a shape. A shape facing the house. Pete's breath hitched. "Ash, look." Ashley hovered beside him, staring at the phone screen as the shape slowly drifted out of sight without making a sound. No footsteps. No rustling leaves. Just gone. Pete locked the house immediately, checking every door and window twice. The two of them sat awake in the living room, lights on, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator like it was the only thing keeping the dark outside. Around 2 a.m., Ashley finally whispered, "What if it wasn't the woods that scared it away last night? What if it followed us home because it already knew where we lived?" Before Pete could respond, a soft sound tapped against the window beside them.
Once. Twice.
3 times. Like fingertips brushing the glass. Pete stood, slowly, carefully, raising the phone again. His hands trembled as he lifted the camera toward the window. Nothing. He scanned higher. Nothing. He stepped closer, leaned in. A faint outline pressed against the glass. Not clear enough to identify, but unmistakably human-shaped. Pete stumbled back, dropping his phone to the floor. The shape slid away silently, disappearing into the darkness again. Neither of them slept the rest of the night. And when dawn finally came, illuminating the yard in pale yellow light, something waited for them on the porch. A single muddy footprint. Not shaped like a shoe. Not shaped like a bare foot. Something different. Something wrong. And it was facing the door. Waiting. By morning, the footprint on the porch still hadn't faded. It looked even clearer in the daylight, longer than a human foot, but too narrow to belong to any animal in the region. Pete crouched down and noticed something else. The dirt inside the print was darker, almost clay-like, as if whatever made it had come from a place wet, cold, and far from their property. Ashley stood behind him. "It was right here," she whispered. "Right at the door." Pete nodded, saying nothing. Neither of them wanted to go back inside, but neither wanted to stay outside either. Everything felt wrong. Every sound seemed amplified. Every shadow looked like it might shift when they blinked. They spent most of the day avoiding the windows, drifting from room to room as if movement could mask the fear. By sunset, the air turned heavy, the sky falling into that deep blue tone that made everything look like a faded photograph. The same color the thing seemed to prefer. That's when Pete heard it again. A soft hum, almost musical, floating through the trees. The exact same warbling tone they'd heard their first night in the field. It was back. Ashley rushed to the window, but Pete pulled her away. "Don't look," he whispered. "Just don't." But the humming grew louder. Not aggressive, just steady, calm, and deliberate. Like it was calling to something. Or someone. Then the lights flickered. The whole house dimmed for half a second, then went dark. The hum cut out instantly, replaced by a silence that felt too heavy to be natural. Ashley grabbed Pete's arm. "It's close." Her voice was so soft he barely heard it. Pete stepped toward the window, but before he could reach it, something brushed across the outside siding, slow, dragging, like fingertips gliding along the walls. They moved from the kitchen to the hallway to the living room, tracing the outline of the house. Then everything stopped. For a moment, there was no sound, no hum, no footsteps, no tapping, just a void-like stillness pressing against the walls. Ashley whispered, "Maybe it's gone." But Pete shook his head.
No.
"It's waiting." He grabbed a flashlight, switched it on, and held it like a shield. The beam trembled in his hand. Ashley stayed behind him as they stepped toward the hallway, where the sound had last been. Nothing. Then Pete's phone, lying forgotten on the floor, lit up. A notification popped onto the lock screen. "Motion detected. Backyard camera." Pete tapped it. The video loaded. At first, it showed only darkness, the faint outline of the shed barely visible in the background. The grass shimmered under the flashlight they'd left on the porch earlier. Nothing moved. Then the screen glitched, just a flicker. And in that flicker something stood near the tree line.
Tall. Still.
Facing the house. The glitch cut out, and the shape vanished again. Ashley covered her mouth. "Pete." He didn't answer. He was staring at the video timeline. The camera had detected motion only once, just for a split second, but the playback bar showed something strange. The recording didn't stop. It continued for 6 minutes. 6 minutes of nothing but darkness. Except, as Pete watched closely, he noticed the grass changing each minute. The angle of the shadows shifting. The flashlight beam bending slightly. As if something large was standing just out of frame, blocking the light in subtle intervals. And then the feed cut to black. "Okay," Pete whispered. "We're leaving. Tonight." Ashley grabbed their backpacks without even asking where they'd go. Anywhere felt safer than there. They packed fast, checking over their shoulders every few seconds. By the time they reached the front door, their nerves were stretched thin. Pete twisted the lock. Something moved behind them. Both froze. Not outside. Not at a window. Not at the walls. Behind them. Inside the house. The faintest sound, like a soft exhale, came from the back hallway. Pete raised the flashlight slowly and aimed it toward the darkness. At first, there was nothing. Then the beam caught something just around the corner, something leaning almost as if it had been listening the whole time. A tall, thin outline. Still. Silent. Its shape blurred at the edges like fog trapped in a human form. The beam shook wildly. Pete took Ashley's hand. "Go," he whispered. "Don't run. Just go." They backed toward the porch door. The shape didn't move, didn't react. It stood there, half a silhouette, half a shadow, as if the house itself was holding it in place. They stepped outside, closed the door, got in the car. Ashley didn't ask questions.
She didn't need to.
As they pulled away, the porch light flickered again. For a split second, Pete thought he saw something standing behind the window's sheer curtain, watching them leave.
Tall. Thin.
Still. The same shape. The same presence. Only now it wasn't outside waiting to come in. It had already been inside.